I'm here for a project to ask you about your travel experiences when you were a young adult or a child to just better understand how traveling was in the past. So, could you begin by telling us your name?
My name is Beth Gardner Brown. I'm 51 years old, mother of Grace Gardner Brown and Zachary Charles Brown. I was born in 1966, and back in my day, when I was a child, I have no memories of travel whatsoever. I was born to two working class people who worked extremely hard, but vacations were just, travel was not part of our lives.
So, it's easy to say then that you did not travel frequently in your childhood.
No, we did not travel frequently. I have been told of a trip to Disney World when I was 5, and we stood in line with tickets at Disney World to ride Dumbo, and we have no pictures of that because cameras were not a big thing back then either. And that was probably in 1970, 71. And my parents were working class people, and vacations were just not part of our life.
Can you tell me about when you started traveling? Did you start traveling when you got older and moved away from your parents?
Yes. The first memories I have of travel are from college, spring breaks. We went to Daytona Beach in 1985, I went to Fort Lauderdale in 1985. And then Daytona, 1986, maybe 1987. I graduated in 1988. But those were like 20 girls piled in a room for a spring break experience. And at that time, I had been to the beach one other time before those experiences. But the main memories I remember are right after college graduation. I graduated at the University of Tennessee in 1988.
And when you started traveling after college with your friends, like you said, can you think of a time and tell us about a time that you were traveling with them that made you uncomfortable?
Oh, yeah, it all made me uncomfortable because I had never traveled before. But some of my friends had, but none of us were huge travelers because it just wasn't, even the wealthy people didn't travel as much back then. But I remember specifically one of my friends from college, parents had a home near the ocean in Florida, and she invited us to go. And Florida from Knoxville, Tennessee, or Maryville, Tennessee, is not very far, and that's not maybe what travel is, but it felt that way to me because having never done it before, never experienced it, it was my first experience with it.
So about that experience, what about that situation and your surroundings in Destin, what do you think made you uncomfortable about that experience?
Well, we were 6 girls. We were maybe 21. All but one of us had never done anything like this before, so safety was a big issue. I'm not sure we were even aware of the safety issue then. But when you get there, and it was the first time you had to be responsible, the first time you had to, check in, get yourself to Destin. We were all at that point, living in different parts of the country. It was hard because we were concerned, and it was the first time that we'd ever been faced with something like that because we'd always had a safety net of college or our parents' homes.
And with those lived experiences in mind, your trips with friends and your lack of traveling as a young child, has that changed your perspective or worldview on travel and how you look at traveling now?
Oh my gosh, it's changed so much. That little experience to Destin, doing that by myself, with my friends, of course, I thought I can do anything. And when we had our own children, we wanted to show them more. And so we've tried to do more and see more. And back then, the perception was money. If you didn't have money, if you're blue collar or middle class, people didn't travel. That's what I did when I was growing up. You know, we just didn't travel. That was a luxury. Travel was a big luxury, some pie in the sky idea. And now it's not. Now travel is almost, to most people, a necessity. Middle class people travel all the time, go lots of different places. Um, Blue collar, I mean, we want to see and do more. And yes, those experiences, that experience with my friends in Destin, Florida, changed my experience of travel to the point where, you know, going out of the country now, you know, I've been out of the country a couple of times, taking my children. I want them to see and do more. Thing I took away from traveling with my girlfriends to Destin, Florida, one of the girl who had her family had a condo. She was so welcoming or whatever, and I realized that people just welcome your friends no matter where you are. And the reason I cherish those memories so much now is because she has since passed. She died way too young at the age of 45 of Lou Gehrig's disease. And that changed my perception of travel because I always associate her memory with my very first travel experience.
Hello, I just wanted to ask you a few questions about your travel experiences as a child and any challenges you may have faced and just really what your experience was. And I was just wondering if you could start out by introducing yourself.
Yeah, I'm Larry Brown. Travels as a child, there's probably one trip that comes to mind. We traveled pretty much every year, but typically it was, you know, a 1 week vacation or something. But when I was probably about 8, we went out west. Grew up in Florida. We drove, a family of 5, in a Delta 88 Oldsmobile for 4 weeks. So traveled out west, went to the Grand Canyon, Zion, Bryce, Yellowstone, California, into Mexico, a little bit everywhere. So a lot different than the time that you have now and the process you have now.
So you mentioned the process of travel being different. What differences do you see from that Grand Canyon trip to how you travel now?
Well, the biggest thing is just usually traveling by car, that kind of distance is rare. I mean, for a couple reasons. It's just time consuming to drive. Now you can fly, usually get there pretty reasonably. But, and then also just, you know, space and cost and those kind of things. But, you know, we, like I said, family of 5, suitcases, a cooler. I mean, we parents pretty much worked it, you know, we're probably lower middle class. You were eating breakfast and lunch out of a cooler, your little things like that, whereas now you're a little more prone to fly somewhere, rent a car, go see the sights, get in and out quick. So, I mean, they're a lot different than vacations nowadays.
Can you think about any vacation that you took as a child that made you uncomfortable?
I wouldn't say uncomfortable, but I guess during that trip you went out to some of the Indian reservations where, you know, you're the only non-Indian. So, I mean, there you became aware of it. I wasn't uncomfortable with it, but you did recognize it. And then also you saw some of the poverty that they lived in at the time. I mean, you know, tin houses and aluminum siding as their entire house, those kind of things. So it was a little bit eye-opening, even, you know, in our situation where we were, you know, not that well off, but you know, you saw what you had compared to what they were dealing with. So.
And how old were you when you went out west and went to the Indian reservations?
Well, we went out west. That was probably 1973, so I was like 8 years old. I had 2 brothers that were each 3 and 6 years older than I, so all of us together in a car. Suitcases and cooler, like I said, so pretty cramped. You had a lot of times where you were, you know, we were trying to make a deadline, get to a certain place, those kind of things. So you had the whole no stops. You had to go to the bathroom in the jar and all those kind of things. You know, you celebrated some of the stays where you were able to find a hotel with a pool and the parents agreed to it, and you know, those those little fun things. But it was a good trip. I enjoyed it.
And have those travel experiences that you had changed your perspective or worldview on travel, or how has it affected how you travel now?
Yeah, I would say it has. I mean, a lot of times if we were able to try and plan for a longer vacation and get there and embrace the culture and see the differences instead of just flying in, do the highlights and fly out. You know, from being a kid and seeing all that out there, you saw the drastic poverty and how that differed. So you kind of tried to, you know, empathize a little bit with the people in that situation. But and then it's, you know, gives you just a perspective. But it was kind of a neat thing. My mom went there in the 40s. And so when we got married, we wanted to take our kids out there to see the sights, but also to have some away time from the glitz and glamour of the bright light big city, and have some family time to bond too. So
when I look back at my travel experiences from when I was a kid up until now, and especially hearing from my parents, I think about how fortunate I am to have been all around the world, and how that differs from their childhood experiences. And like you heard from my dad, we went to the Grand Canyon when I was 11 years old. And in an effort to kind of remember things that he experienced, as well as what we learned and what we experienced when we went to the Grand Canyon out west, my mom made us document in journals and in picture albums every day of the trip. And that was a really great experience, because that was one of the longest vacations we've ever taken. I saw so much in a short amount of time. It was a fun trip. I was at a good age. And it, again, just makes me think how lucky I am to have been there and seen everything that I've seen. And just our family always has the expectation we'll travel at least once a year. It might not be a big trip, but we'll go away just from our house and kind of escape reality for a little bit. And I just think that that's not something that everyone is afforded the opportunity to have. And I definitely realize how grateful and how fortunate I am. Our family's been all around the world and all around the United States. We've been, as I said before, out west. I've been to New York. I've been to Chicago. We've been to the beach. We've been to the Bahamas a couple of times. We went to Mexico. I've been to Canada. So many places that I never thought I'd see, and I'm only 21 and still have the desire to travel well up until I can't anymore. And I also feel really fortunate to say there's never been a time that I've been traveling that I don't feel welcome somewhere, or felt like I'm just another tourist. I feel like I've really gotten valuable cultural experiences, and learned lots of valuable life lessons while I was traveling.